Record the president. Now, one lawmaker revealing we may all be getting answers very soon. Listen.
This is more likely going to be a public hearing where more members of Congress will be able to ask some of the questions that I just raised directly to the Deputy Attorney General. I don't think it's likely to happen in the next week before the midterms,
Right.
but I know that, hopefully the sooner the better.
He wanted 30 minutes, and just on that 25th Amendment, he did not want other questions, and he was going to get them. Here to weigh in is Fox News contributor and former U.S. Attorney Andy McCarthy. Andy, are you surprised Rosenstein punted, and what do you think he's up to?
Well, I'm not surprised he punted. I thought that, with due respect to Representative Ratcliffe, to say that one of the reasons it was put off is that Rosenstein, didn't realize that the questioning was going to be about the Russia investigation. I mean, what do you think they wanted to talk to him about? The weather? Of course he knew it was about the Russia investigation. He's trying to put this off, as he has been, beyond the midterms. And then the idea will be, Brian, that if the Democrats take the House, people will say, and the Justice Department will say, no point having a big hearing during a lame duck session of Congress, and then the Democrats will be running the place and there won't be a hearing.
However, on the Senate side, Judiciary Committee Chairman, most likely to replace Grassley, will be Lindsey Graham. He is not letting up. He is he's as exercised on this as Radcliffe is.
Yeah, well, I think, Brian, that probably one of the most important and least talked about pieces of reporting from Capitol Hill that we've had in this whole investigation is what Senator Grassley and Senator Graham, that report that they put out about the FISA application, which gave us insight into it. These are the FISA applications against the former Trump campaign advisor, Carter Page. That gave us more insight into FISA abuse than anything that we had seen to that point.
And now the Papadopoulos revelations are jarring, unbelievable thinking, and there's too much to get into now. We'll have you back. You wrote a column that floored me about Europe bowing to Sharia, and they basically have to get permission to have free speech. What are you talking about?
Well, they don't have free speech in Europe, Brian. They don't have a First Amendment. They've never had it. It's always been easier in Europe to regulate speech. But what they've now done is adopted Sharia blasphemy standards. So you had a woman in Austria who tried to talk about some tenets of Islamic history and Islamic law, including the fact that Muhammad married a very young girl, and that's, sacred scripture attests to that. And even though it's true, she was told that she couldn't speak about it because it might foment religious hatred and discord. So basically, you don't have free speech in Europe. What you have is whatever speech the government decides they will indulge, provided that it doesn't cause, discord and unrest.
Where is it trending? Where is it trending? Towards more openness or more closeness?
No, it's trending toward not only more closeness, but this is the Muslim Brotherhood plan. It always has been. You set up these enclaves in the West. You demand of the host country that they allow you to run your affairs according to Sharia, and over time you push the society to adopt Sharia standards. It's exactly what they've been doing. I feel like I'm a broken record. I've been saying this for 10 years, but it is what it is.
Right, and then you'll see how popular it is in Europe to see who gets elected, because sooner or later, when things have to change, they do. Right now, they're on that road, as Angela Merkel got another rebuke yesterday in an election against her party. And a lot of people say it goes back to the immigrants that she allowed to flood in by the millions 5 years ago. Andy McCarthy, thanks so much. Yeah, pick up his column,
Thanks,
National
Brian.
Review.
Joining us now with more reaction, author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, The Russia Hoax, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. Also, Fox News investigative reporter, contributor Sarah Carter, and from the Hill, John Solomon. Sarah and John, I'll start with both of you in the reporting, and Greg has a column coming out tomorrow that he shared with me. What both of you and Catherine have all reported today is that you have McCabe and you have Lisa Page all saying that when Rod Rosenstein, Sarah, we'll start with you, said that he wanted to surreptitiously record the President of the United States, and this would be a plot, a revenge, if you will, against the firing of James Comey, which he recommended, which is ironic. They're saying it's real. Rosenstein is saying it's not real. I was only saying it sarcastically. Well, we got 2 against 1, but you got 2 people that are in the deep state. Who do you believe?
Well, this is why we've got to come to the truth. Somebody is lying here. But look, Sean, we have the former general counsel for the FBI, James Baker. This is so important because James Baker delivered this testimony deliberately, without any emotion. He absolutely 100% believed Andrew McCabe and Lisa Page. I think even more shocking is that there are 2 other people within the administration, apparently, who were on board with Rod Rosenstein and trying to invoke the 25th Amendment, you know, saying that the president was unfit for office. So there is something happening within the administration, and Rod Rosenstein has those answers. Thursday is going to be very telling. Will he show up? Will he answer all these questions? And who is actually investigating the investigators? I keep saying this over and over again, Sean. If Rod Rosenstein is in charge of the special counsel, the Mueller investigation, who's in charge of Rod Rosenstein? He is in the middle of all of this. He signed the FISA, the final FISA warrant on Carter Page. He actually wrote the letter to basically, to give the president so that Comey would be fired. He laid it all out. This guy is in the middle of everything, and somebody needs to find out the truth because he's still, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States.
John Solomon, and by the way, to answer Sarah's question, who's investigating the investigators, all of us have been from the beginning. It started with both of you, to be honest. Led to Greg's #1 New York Times bestseller. But this sounds like a soft coup, revenge taken out on the president. You have 2 people that both recorded the very same thing here, John, about what Rod Rosenstein said at the time. That's McCabe, but he's under criminal investigation. And Page, friends with Strzok, that thinks, Hillary should win 100 million to 0.
Yeah, listen, just a short while ago, Sean, as I was coming over to the show, I bumped in, ironically, to an old FBI friend of mine. And here's what he said. After reading your articles the last couple of weeks, I'm starting to think the FBI needs to rebrand itself. Instead of Federal Bureau of Investigation, maybe we should call ourselves the Federal Bureau of Politics. Because somewhere there was a lot more politics going on than investigating.
But, John, I really need to say this. This is only the top echelon. Yeah, this is not the rank and file. This is not the guy you ran into.
That's right. No, they're embarrassed by this because they do their job every day. They go do, listen, in the middle of Russia, you had one team doing the hacking investigation, professional intelligence work, the other team doing collusion, a total disaster. But let's think about James Baker for just a second. 4 things he revealed. He used the Democratic Party's lawyer as a source. The FBI tried to hide that by redacting it and claiming it was national security information in the House Intelligence Report. He used a journalist as a source, David Corn, to get a version of the dossier after Steele was fired. And he was present for a conversation where at least the FBI people were serious about removing the president and recording him under the 25th Amendment. All 4 of those things are politics. None of them involve legitimate investigation.
And every piece of this goes back to Hillary, who they exonerated without investigating and saved because it was a slam dunk obstruction of justice case. It all comes back to her phony Russian paid for dossier. Before the election, they lied to the American people. After the election, they used it to bludgeon Donald Trump and use a media leak strategy to help set up an atmosphere where a special counsel could be appointed. And still, even Lisa Page said, 9 months, 0 evidence by the time we got to May of 2017. Greg, you have a column coming out tomorrow. I want to read the first paragraph to our audience here. When you talk, how is it possible Rod Rosenstein is still in charge of the special counsel investigation and Trump-Russia collusion? Again, no evidence. Then you say, Trump may have given him a pass, referring to the meeting he had on Air Force One yesterday, for now. But Americans should not, and neither should the Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who seems perpetually missing in action and clueless, which I sadly can't disagree with, and I always liked him.
Rosenstein is hopelessly compromised. He not only has disqualifying conflicts of interest because he's a key pivotal witness in the case over which he presides, and you can't be a judge and the jury and a witness and the prosecutor all rolled into one. It's a violation of federal regulations. It demands his removal and recusal, 28 U.S.C. 528. But on top of it, now there's this new evidence in 3 witnesses that in an act of vengeance for the firing of Comey, he's trying to secretly record the President of the United States and depose him in the equivalent of a palace coup. I mean, this is egregious misconduct. It requires his termination, at the very least, the removal from the special counsel case.
We still need the declassification.
Oh, sure. And
the unredacted FISA and the 302s. And
he is suppressing wrongdoing by the FBI and the Department of Justice and suppressing his own wrongdoing in signing off on the FISA warrant.
Sarah, John, do you agree with the characterization? Because I agree with Greg. I believe this was an attempt to literally set a president up for a soft coup.
100%, Sean. There is overwhelming evidence, not just circumstantial anymore. We've seen it in writing. We've seen it with testimony that's been provided to Congress. This was a white coup, a silent coup, a bloodless coup. I think what's so concerning to me is how dangerous this has been to America, how dangerous this still is to the administration, and it needs to be investigated. It has to be either a special counsel or someone else.
John?
Yeah, listen, the single biggest threat Rod Rosenstein faces isn't the plot that he didn't carry out to remove Trump. It's the misleading of the FISA court. Catherine Herridge asked him the right question. Someone has to answer that question. Did he mislead the FISA court? If it's yes, he doesn't belong there.
Who do you believe here? Do you believe McCabe and Page, or do you believe Rod Rosenstein?
I'll never believe Rod Rosenstein. He has a long and distinguished track record of deception.
John?
Listen, I think you got to wait till all the facts come out. We haven't heard from Rod Rosenstein himself. It's one thing for a spokesperson to put out a statement. He's got to put his word on it, and then we have to hear what he has to say about it.
And Sarah?
I don't believe any of them, Sean, and I think it needs to be investigated.
Sad. Biggest abuse of power in our history. We will get to the bottom of it. We're going to stay on it. Anyway, thank you all.
Jews in the United States who are helping support him and continue to give him cover, which I'm reading this stuff going, this is literally insane. I have no words for this.
No, exactly. This is the best president from the point of view of Jewish survival that we've ever had. Trump. I mean, they'll call him an anti-Semite. His kids are Orthodox Jews, for crying out tears. I mean, it's just insanity. And these so-called liberal Jews are contributing to the problem of hate for the Jews by, I mean, they're always attacking me. I know I've done a lot of demonstrations on college campuses against Students for Justice in Palestine. And I'm anathema to the Jewish left for that reason. And it's the same thing. I mean, the history here, you have to know something. But just having a security guard in a synagogue is such common sense. Of course you need that. But to have the mayor of Pittsburgh say, no, that's terrible. And to have the Jewish magazine say that Trump is blaming the synagogue for the killing, it just shows you how, everybody uses this word, but deranged the left is these days.
Now, and gosh, if they're like, well, Trump's a Nazi, Trump's like Hitler.
Of course. Okay,
now how does that make sense with the policies that he has advocated and implemented that are pro-Israeli, that are in favor of protecting the ultimate in the Jewish state? How does any of this make sense? And it's like there's no concern about history.
of religious liberty, which is the foundation of all of our liberties. Something Obama was an enemy of religious liberty. So, Obama and the fake news press, which I so love it that Trump has taken on the press. They're such liars and character assassins. Actually, fake news is too kind to them. I've been yanked or used as a prop in the lynch party that's targeted Ron DeSantis in Florida. These newspapers, just casual. I mean,
they throw it out. Wait, they throw out the term, Mike. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're about to go to Black. And David Horowitz, we really appreciate it. 855-40-LAURA. David is the founder and president of the Horowitz Freedom Center, editor of Front Page Magazine. Stay there. Kind of support role than anything else, but but we can't talk about this, right? Is this another thing that the left doesn't want us to be able to talk about before the election? Do you notice that there are issues after... No, yeah, of course. The issue after issue that resonates with the American public, they don't want Republicans to be able to talk about. Because Trump is connecting on these issues, correct? He's connecting on the issue of sovereignty. He's connecting on the issue of trade. He's connecting with more African-American voters. He's connecting with more Hispanic voters who followed the law, who came here the right way, and who want others to come here the right way so we have an orderly process of immigration. They want their public schools to be not overly burdened by a massive influx of people that we cannot assimilate properly, and they want what's best for the country. That is not a negative thing. That's a very positive thing. Yet the Democrats want to take these issues off the table lest they continue to blame Donald Trump for hateful rhetoric that's fueling an anti-Semite who gunned down 11 people in a synagogue. Now, how you tag Trump with the actions of a evil, anti-Semitic, anti-Trump individual who declared himself to be anti-Trump, as he said Trump's a globalist, you try to tag Trump with that. Because Trump talks about sovereignty and describes himself as a nationalist. He clearly explained, and we'll play it again, what nationalist means last week. He discussed this for anyone who's confused about what nationalism, and we had that Yoram Hazany on Fox. We should bring him on again because they're hitting that issue all day long. He wrote the great piece about the meaning of nationalism and how it has... Nationalism has actually protected freedoms in this country, freedoms in the United States, how critical it is for us to keep our sense of culture and freedom, understanding through strong borders, a strong sense of sovereignty, etc. But before we get into that, we have to focus on how they're managing to try to tie the caravan to this. And Raymond Arroyo is with us. Raymond, you can't be surprised by this at this point because we know that issue is one that happens to be devastating to the Democrats.
Well, there was a poll over the weekend from CBS. 75% of Republicans consider this a very important issue and believe it's a dangerous one to the country, this coming caravan. So the president, again, following his gut, has tapped into where the American voter is at this moment, and that concerns his opponents. So there seems to be some effort not only to silence him in general, but to silence him on this issue in particular. So we'll see if that's successful. I doubt if it will be.
Well, the president's not going to stop speaking about an issue that involves our national security. We now have members of the military deployed into our southern border. And again, the left wants us to wait until it's a huge humanitarian crisis at the border for us to do anything. I mean, they want us to wait until the very last moment to try to do something, because then at that point it'll be too late to do anything. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show. The media. What role do the media have in fomenting this perpetual anger toward the president? Now, the media have always been against conservatives. That's not a big shock. That's not a big surprise. But the concern today is that with the president continuing to call it fake news, that fueled the hate of that freak in Florida, and that this is just not what we need at a time like this. We need unity. As long as everybody's going to abide by the idea that unity is going to be an overriding principle in a midterm cycle. But I don't see that that's realistic for a variety of reasons. We have sharp political differences in the country today. They're sharp. One party wants to abolish ICE. The other party wants to enforce our borders. One party wants to raise taxes. Another party wants to cut taxes. One party believes that China is not as big a threat as Trump does. Trump believes China is really the ultimate threat across the board to the United States. One party believes that the principles behind climate change should really have an outsized influence in our economic policy, of course, our environmental policy, climatology, all of it. And Trump doesn't believe that. He believes we have to be conservators of our environment, but not at the expense of any and all business. They just have a completely different worldview about really important issues, about the local control of education versus a more centralized control of education. So the idea that the parties are just going to kind of lay down their rhetorical arms and say, okay, we're all just going to get along for the next 8 days is ridiculous.
I do think that the president's tone has certainly helped to degrade where we are as a country. We just heard Kellyanne Conway talking about America first, not a term I would use at a time like this, given the historical connotations. And I think that there's too much of I hear too much nativism, isolationism, protectionism. I think that also contributes to this very ugly negative tone when it comes to situations like this.
Is that George Bush? The isms? The isms are back. So now the isms are linked to the shooting. This is just ridiculous. You see that Bolsonaro winning in Brazil. Huge story. Of course, they're going crazy about it. Well, what happens when the socialists turn a country to dust? What happens when left-wing policies fail? People are desperate, and they start looking at other ideas. And they're looking at Bolsonaro as someone who's more like Trump, who's going to get back to the basics on the economy. And I bet Bolsonaro and Trump form a very productive relationship trade-wise. Watch the trade deal that's going to come out of this Bolsonaro-Trump relationship down the road. That's my prediction. But a friend of mine in Mexico alerted me to Bolsonaro. This must have been 6 months ago, and says, keep your eye on this Brazil race. This guy's going to win. He's the Trump of Brazil. You see, Merkel, it's her last term. She's stepping away as head of her party, Christian Democrat Party in Germany. She's stepping away, although it's going to continue to, she'll serve out her term. That's another huge issue. The Italy versus the EU, Brexit, all of